Say good evening. Well, hello world. We're joined again this evening to read something of the ideas, the heart, the thought of Swami Abhedananda. Let's see, they probably has a picture at the beginning of this book. And I wonder, this is a wonderful picture. With a little help from our friends, can we pick up this picture?
A little right there. Yes.
Can we see our beautiful picture of Swami Abhedananda in meditation? I kind of forget how many volumes there are. There are more than the 9 volumes of Swami Vivekananda. I'm looking for another one of these at the moment. And maybe 10, at least, we'll say 10. And I think each one of them has a photograph of this marvelous Swami, the very picture of which itself would be an inspiration and a stimulus to meditation. We've been doing the best we can to relate to the voluminous life somewhat apart, you could say, from the rest of the 16 disciples who, though 5 of them traveled to the United States, spent most of their active ministry, I think I can say faithfully, in India. And with the exception of Vivekananda, who spent more time, really, that is to say in terms of numbers of years, in the West in his active ministry, believe it or not, if you add them up, a couple of trips, than he did in India. And he moved mountains in both hemispheres. Imagine, in both parts of the world. Some of us might even go as far, it's a little provincial, but that's to be expected, of your own little group, your high school. He changed the world. He certainly changed the world in India. We might even go into that someday, at least in a brief way. And so Swami Abhedananda spent, as we now know, 25 years before he went back, and we caught his arrival some days back, some Friday nights back in India, and he kind of took a big sigh of relief, took off his coat, as it were, and opened his heart humorously and informally to the Indian devotees who had greeted him. And he himself felt, did Swami Abhedananda, and, it's his angle of perception. It's how he felt about the response, the work that Swamiji had done here, originally at the Parliament of World Religions in 1893, and then soon after that calling for Abhedananda to come to this country to carry on the work. Abhedananda felt, he said so to his friends back home, right upon his arrival, after all those years, that he felt that the work that had been done, we'll say, through Swamiji and him, had changed the idea of the West, in quotes, be capital W, as far as India was concerned. Now, if one wants to be a little technical about things, and mathematical, literal in a way, one might say, looking at it objectively, well, yes, he did change the minds of quite a few people. And yes, it was 180 degrees. When Swamiji went to the Parliament, the most rank, for fun, we'll call it, in quotes, comic strip representations of India abounded. In other words, stereotypes being what they were, based on ignorance, which is what stereotypes are. To me, a stereotype is taking somebody, or say something, but somebody as two-dimensional. A cardboard cutout, if you will, when actually there's 3. And more than that, when you get the heart and the personality involved, therefore. And it's the spiritual dimension which, shining from above to the 3 dimensions within which the West we have discovered and determined over our nights together is willing to deal with consciousness, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. Our psychologists, to some degree, have been studying those, physiologists even in the latter case. But they don't know about the superconscious. They don't know about the fourth dimension in that sense. And we've learned over the days that we've been with Abhedananda so much about that. We learned originally that, and we'll do this again maybe next Friday actually, we learned first of all in our attempt to see what India at the Parliament of Religions was bringing to the West on equal ground, because Swamiji assured himself that it would be on equal ground. We are not the proponents of an ancient, by which might be meaning outmoded civilization and a way of worship. We are not that of a simpler group, a throwback in time. Rather, we're at present a symphony of religious inspiration and spiritual relevance. Spiritual experience, as our founding Swamis used to say, and it's so true, spirituality can be caught and not taught. So with Vivekananda, who himself was another galaxy, and then Abhedananda, his chosen brother disciple who came and stayed with us, as I like to say, for 20, 25 years, it fell in. I just love the image of soaking the donut in the coffee. He was saturated. These men, the early ones of the first 16 disciples, and then the third generation that came to this country, they understood something beautiful. If they wanted to reach the heart and soul of the American people, how can I say it? They had to make the American people feel almost that they had come for them, that they were like them, not unlike them, that they loved them, that they understood them. And yes, a kind of a pretending, if you will, by dealing with the issues and the times and the way of speaking and the interests of the American people. In general, the ones that came to hear them, sometimes by the thousands, the case of Vivekananda and Abhedananda, and sometimes, all those cherished times, that they came one by one to the Swami down to the third generation, the disciples of the direct disciples, for interviews, and found that they seemed to have touched the Swami's heart. The Swami certainly had touched their heart through love and understanding, and as in the case of Brahmananda, Vivekananda's pal, the grandfather in spirit of this place, that they were one with them. They would talk about what they wanted to talk about. Brahmananda himself, a tremendous revelatory human being. I just heard one of our brothers, Swami Abhedananda, the other day, said when he went to one of the places that Brahmananda had been in India, the whole place to him was like a sphere of spirituality. How about that? Brahmananda, it was said of him that he himself, not that often, spoke of God. I like to say he spoke God. He could talk to the person about what was relevant for him and her. Sometimes the very subject they wanted to talk about. And oh yes, one more thing about Abhedananda's presence in America, and that is that that is to say, Brahmananda laughed with them, the Americans, uproariously, as he had done in India with his own disciples. Our founding Swami used to say that he had them rolling on the floor. And Swami Brahmananda himself, speaking of spirituality, which is an experiential thing. That's why some people say they want to be spiritual and not religious. Swami Brahmananda would actually say himself, it's good to laugh. Aha, he meant as a spiritual exercise at least once a day. So here we have a whole different order of being in which Abhedananda figures that Swamiji and he, following through, putting it an expansion, you might say. Swamiji's thoughts are rife through all that we've been reading of him. And he had the feeling that they switched the view of the American people from a childlike example of the religious history or the spirituality of the human race in an understanding of the cascading glory of a hemisphere that was still in direct experiential relation to God. So that's what we've been dealing with. And we'll point out that we started this path, which has led us to quite an awareness of the world that Swami Abhedananda was trying to suggest existed. And that's, you see, when they felt that they had come for them, what I'm saying, that's right. That's exactly what Vivekananda had done and Abhedananda. They came, my friends, for the people who had assembled. This is a miraculous country. From the whole ranges and reaches of the earth. Some just got off the plane yesterday. I would love to remind myself, speaking 180 languages at home in L.A., they call this a country? And the degree to which the dream, the realization, the ideal of America has caught the minds of the people of the world is remarkable. They have nothing in common, in quotes. And yet it's the most flag-waving country in the world. It's almost embarrassing. Try to look at through the spectacles of an Englishman, it's almost embarrassing. The only place I know you see more national flags as many or something is Ireland, And they have a reason, don't you know? Because Ireland since 400 or 500 AD, whenever it was, that Patrick came, they had some very early admonitions of the Christian ideal. But from that time, they held on to their faith, don't you know? They had their temples, their churches taken away from them. They had their monasteries. I've seen it with my own eyes. Destroyed. The monasteries in Ireland and England are ruins. But they're not ruins. You go in and you feel something. It's our places of pilgrimage. One of them, it's a wonderful thing. It is called Ballintubber Abbey, the church, don't you know, that refused to die. When they destroyed the church, they held the services outdoors. They never missed a one. And then they rebuilt the church. So it's holding on to the faith and the loyalty of that faith of our Father's holy faith. We shall be true to thee till death. And that little tricolor flag that happens to hold the same colors as India. So how does it happen that this conglomeration of the peoples of the earth, the greatest diversity you can find anywhere, they call themselves, it's not a secular term, my friends. It's not sociological, Americans. It's because of the ideal. It's because of our scriptures in the Declaration, all people, everyone is created equal. Oh, yes, and religious freedom. That document was more important to Tom Jefferson and the Declaration of Independence than any other thing he did. Even becoming president, which he didn't feel he needed on his epitaph. But oh yes, author of the Declaration of Independence. Certain inalienable rights granted to us by nature and nature's God. And among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's America. That's what people come for. That's the American dream, for each person to try to figure it out. And here in the latter day, they speak of the Latter-day Saints, and boy, they have them among the Mormon church. In the latter day come Vivekananda and Abhedananda, dancing in from the Eastern Hemisphere. And yes, they did come for us. All of us. Including the Indian Americans who've come over and made such a splash in a few years. My gosh, in every hall of justice, in every place of wisdom, in every position, ministerial and professional and everything. The Indian people have hit the ground running quicker than any other immigrating facility, including your folks and yours, and whoever you are. With the possible exception of Native Americans so far back in time, 13,000, 30,000, maybe more years ago, their folks came from the East. All of these people have found the opportunity. And Vivekananda, as you remember, said, and this is what we've been reading in these holy scriptures, the subtext, the silent, spiritual heart of what we've been reading. Vivekananda said, as Buddha had a message for the East, I have a message for the West. And what is it? It is that there is a higher dimension of consciousness flooding us all like light. And the first thing we discovered, that's what we probably will try to find some more summary in, another Friday maybe. The first thing we discovered was E equals MC squared, 1905. Matter just dropped out as a principle of physics, Einstein said. In that equation, in the equation of 1905. And the E is capitalized. Everything's energy, including matter, congealed energy. So we went from the physical, the sense receptacles, the eyes, which are not the organ of vision, and the little nerves going back, remember, to the temporal lobe, to the actual occipital lobe in the back, where we see things, the color, the world, the universe, and therefore have the right to have our own view of government, and in which actually no church head, even leader, and the leaders won't do it, has the right to tell us what to do. That is to say, what to think. We have to find it on our own through association with the holy. So you see, it's been a tremendous journey that we've spent. And eventually we find that this trail of consciousness leads like an inward spiral, back and back and back, deeper and deeper within, from inside, through the levels of the mind, the gathering of the senses, and then the discriminating faculty. And even these, the difference between, frankly, idealism and realism, in a debate that's gone on in Western a lot. The idea that maybe everything are just ideas. Okay. But then we begin to find out that physical reality itself is not hard matter. Don't you see? A drop. Whitehead's paraphrase of Whitehead's views, an electron is a drop of experience seen from the inside, and everything has an inside is experience. So what is reality? Now it becomes consciousness, but not ideas as objects. Ideas as subjects. Everything has an inside, an experiential subjectivity. And so consciousness becomes reality, therefore there is no argument anymore. We are not idealists with a collection of ideas, and that's all it is. Even Bishop Berkeley's idea that the world is, well, yes, there are ideas, but they're ideas in the mind of God, in other words, a subconscious whole of everyone's idea. India has that idea too. But it's not, as the West wants to say all the time, object, object, object. So consciousness itself becomes substance. Consciousness itself becomes reality. That's what we've been studying here. And then as the consciousness gets deeper and bigger and more all-embracing, and yes, fourth dimension, fourth from the Turiya state, the real reality is the consciousness of God, the love and light of God streaming into our lives and our world. Even both idealism and realism, if you assign those to the mind and to the experiencing subject of a human being, They go poof into a much larger realm, the realm of what our beloved Abhedananda has been calling the divine all along. So yes, by the walking sticks of the mind, particularly the logical, distinguishing, differentiating, discriminating mind, analyzing mind, one goes backward and upward and deeper within, establishes some kind of relation, rapport, actual feeling of the presence of being part of or aware of or related to something far bigger that soon becomes awareness aware. You are part of it, you love it, your chosen ideal in the form perhaps of an illumined soul, a superluminary. I just love the African American experience, which is so much of the bedrock of who we are as Americans. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. I woke up this morning with my mind stayed on Jesus. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Well, I'm sorry, my friends, but with some of the boys and girls today, yeah. And what kind of religion you got? What kind? Are you religious? Well, I'd rather be called, in my search, spiritual and not religious. Sometime I've got to get whoever it was, Mort Saul, somebody, his view about all that. But it was the idea that in some people's experience, not mine, oh Lord, but some people's, the church gets in the way. Churchianity gets in the way of some of these young people of God. So don't you see what Swami Vivekananda and Abhedananda did was to bring the ocean of the Eastern Hemisphere into the West. Yes, and little by little, one by one, as the years go on, change the whole orientation of the West, of America, for example, toward the East, the whole idea toward India. And I love to say that what it was the ocean of spirituality, of mysticism, which is inviting the divine presence within one's heart as love and light. The ocean of spirituality, the waves of mysticism come crashing up on the walls, the rock walls of the West's left hemisphere, the analytic hemisphere, which as it descended through Aristotle became the foundation of science, which is based on Aristotle, and the religion of the universal church, the church universal, up into the 1200s, when Aristotelianism, it's a very simple thing. Aristotle was wondering about stuff objectively, analytically. Grandson, you could say, spiritual of Socrates, the illumined soul, disciple of Plato, the wonderful synthesis, holistic, great philosopher of the West. And he said to himself, said he one day, as he sat down and thunk, he said to himself, well, now, what is the end of man? What is the highest thing that the human being is searching for? What is the goal? He said, happiness. It's all very interesting. He's the one that gave us the Aristotelian genus and species, and he called man, humanity, a rational animal. And the genus and species is a big circle and a little one. The big circle embraces everything of a category. So our name in the animal kingdom is Homo sapiens, right? We're human. That's the big circle. How are we different? That's the generality, the genus. What is the speciality, the species of being human that we are? Homo sapiens, knowing, understanding, And that doesn't just mean scientific, but it does mean science. So Aristotle has a big imprint on both science and the religion of the Church Universal, the Catholic Church. Homo sapiens. So what I'm trying to get at here is that we have something going on as the ocean of spirituality and love and this and experience, which we're not even aware of, the superconscious state, floods upon us. Yes, they did come for us. Vivekananda said so. As Buddha had a message for the East, I have a message for the West. And that's what it is. And this time it looks like the ocean of mysticism crashing up on the rocks of the analytical abstractionism, the left hemisphere thinking of the West, is going to, as Vivekananda felt, blend and form yet a greater civilization than's ever been known. Oh, all right. Now then, here we go. Let's just have some fun with our boy. The wonderful things here. But I think what I want to do tonight is just take a little bit. This will be from volume 3, since we happen to have it before us. And just see what he's talking about this river of faith, this realm of the ocean. Remember, Vedanta, curiously similar to Carl Jung, who was a friend of our Indian psychology Swami Abhedananda in India. He came to Boston. Abhedananda wrote 2 great books on Indian psychology, and they walk kind of hand in hand, you know. And it turns out that Jung's 4 personality types are exactly the same as the Indian 4 paths or temperaments. But remember, the 4 paths that they found in India, suiting different people, one or many or more, all blended, whatever, they're pretty good. I mean, they really do seem to cover the baseball field, all 4 bases. First base, we'll say, is Jnana Yoga. Shankara's great dictum, 800 BC, 80, or whatever year you want to assign to Shankara. Atman, the infinity shining within in joy and love, and Brahman are one. Brahman, the all. The infinity in both ways, inner and outer, you might say, as represented in the individual soul, and that individuality blends in the universality. Soul, the path of knowledge, the path then of love. And then the third path of work, which often are combined, and really even in the Jnana Yoga are combined because these Karma Yogas keep the body alive, at least. And then the Bhakti Yoga, Shankara himself says, is the identification in one's mind that, yes, Atman and Brahman are one. I am one with the self, capital S. So all 3 yogas are combined there. But some people try in their own stage of the path of life and their path, up the mountain of Everest, the top of the mountain Ramakrishna found was all the same, all one experience. Some of them try to blend their work as worship, their offering of service to another as being a worship at the altar of the divine Brahman who is in the other and ultimately, essentially, is the other. There's nothing else but one shining infinity. So these 4 yogas, each one of them is related to meditation. That's why they call it the royal yoga. I love to say it's a handle. And you can put different things on the handle. You know, you can put a screwdriver, you can put different tools. There are such things. So meditation then becomes essentially the engine room, the royal path of all. The real, not only path to divinity with a capital D, but the swimming in the ocean, the experience of it, until one realizes that with her identity, yes, I am one with God, and I always was. So here's one on meditation. We've studied, he says, the different steps to concentration. Let us now discuss the subject of meditation. The difference between concentration and meditation has also been discussed. When the mind is fixed upon one object, whether external or internal, this is powerful stuff, concrete or abstract, if the flow of thoughts remains steady toward that object for a certain length of time, and the mind runs unbroken, as it were, toward the object, it is meditation. And incidentally, this abstraction thing is very complicated. These words are complicated, particularly the Western mind, the way we use the terms. Abstraction doesn't mean nothingness. It just means withdrawing the mind from objects in the outer world. To what? The full reality, the crescendo of the symphony. I would certainly understand if a person going to the LA Symphony Orchestra, which means a lot to us, Zubin Mehta's been here and so forth, at the crescendo of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, and as it was leading up to that, found herself so immersed in the spirit of sound coming from all directions, unidirectional, bouncing off the walls, that as the crescendo of the finale comes, she just naturally closed her eyes and became one with the sound. That's what we mean by abstraction. Not to nothingness, to everythingness, to reality, to the big boom. So, there you go. That's what meditation is. Flow of thought remains steady toward whatever your concentration subject is, your chosen ideal, and so forth, for a certain length of time, and the mind runs unbroken, as it were, toward the object. It is meditation. That object's within. Jhana. D-H-Y-A-N-A in Sanskrit. The illustration that has been given is that the current should be unbroken, as they say, like oil poured from one vessel to another. As it were, should be unbroken, just as when you pour oil from one vessel into another. It does not break, and there's a continuous flow. If the mental energy flows continuously toward the object of concentration and remains in that way for a certain length of time, it would be called meditation. Now, let's just see for fun how it goes on. Here he says a lot of Sanskrit. We'll kind of pass over those words. It has already been said that the second aphorism of the third chapter of one of these great scriptures runs this. I have to use some of the words, but dharana is holding the mind onto some particular object, one's chosen ideal, and the yearning for God, even if one's just wondering what that's all about, to get there and feel the pull and feel the yearning. And the unbroken flow toward that object is called meditation. And a lot of Sanskrit here. That is, when the flow of our mental energy is absolutely fixed, for example, on the lotus of the heart, or on the intelligence of the brain, so forth, or on a divine symbol, it is called dharana, or concentration. And when the flow is uninterrupted and constant, and the one object of concentration becomes one with the mental energy, it is called jhana, or meditation. Now that's kind of like it. We're talking tonight, as we always want to do when we all get together, we're talking about the engine room. See, when I was in divinity school, one summer, wonderful summer, I was the ship's photographer on the Great Lakes. They had a little cruise ship compared to these big ocean liners. It was a lot of fun. There were two of them. One went from Chicago to Buffalo in a week. You just come back a whole trip. The other went from Buffalo to Chicago. We'd meet at Sault Ste. Marie, where Michigan comes together, and the two ships would be, opposite sides of the dock, as it were. We'd talk to the people on the other ship. Well, I had to develop the film near the engine room. Chicka-boom, 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 chicka-boom. The engine room of that ship. And I had to put ice in the developing solution to keep the temperature at 68 degrees so the time would be equivalent and equal all the time. It's a good image, because we're talking about the engine room. And Brahmananda himself, who is all experience, that's why his book, The Eternal Companion, is our handbook. The Eternal Companion, the life of Swami Brahmananda, B-R-A-H-M-A-N-D-A-N-D, Brahmananda, the bliss of Brahman. He suggests lots of wonderful things. We talked about it before. One of them I love is, 100 thoughts. He has 100, 1,000 hints. You take what you like. He says, perhaps you might like to read a little scripture. Like maybe before you go into meditation in the morning, or sometimes I do it after. And get inspired, he said, and I read a page every day from this handbook, The Eternal Companion, our Boy and Girl Scout handbook, How to Climb the Sierras. And it's the high point of my day. And Swami Shivananda said he got drunk in the morning and was high all day long. So Brahmananda is aware enough of what the experience, the engine room is all about and all that, that he said, when you come out in the morning, for example, why don't you consider this? Before you lay your hand to the plow and start your big day and your work week and all of that, take a little more time to be quiet, to settle down, to be inward still. And he said, and then is when the joy may come. We're talking real time, kids. We're talking about the Indian paddling in the canoe. That's what we're doing here. We're just third graders, whatever. But he's right. During meditation, which whatever the West may think is not nothing, is not sitting doing nothing, thinking of nothing, it's hard work. Talk about energy and karma and all that. The most concentrated work that the Indian people, the Indian person, are virtually illumined swamis and recently illumined swamis. There are people, including Westerners, that we have seen, including some of our own people, the elders, as the Indians say, Westerners who've had visions of God, including at least one that had the experience of lower samadhi, which is like being in the ocean with still a stick of ego, a little bit of, objective, subjective, until you become the one consciousness. So I love to sing that song. And we just take out the military references to one denomination, one religion. I had Chip Murray singing with me in Long Beach, one of the great preachers live today in L.A., of African-American Episcopal, Methodist Episcopal, too young to be a direct person in the Dr. King days, but the the holder of the torch today, the scepter in L.A. And here he is singing along with me in Long Beach. And the universal thing. Like a mighty army moves the church of God. Brothers, we are treading where the saints have trod. Boom, boom, boom. We are not divided. All one body we, one in hope and one in faith, and one in charity. Bum, bum, bum. Why? This is what the harmony of religions means to us, the mystics of the new day, touched by the spirit of Sri Ramakrishna. All right. Concentration is the precondition of meditation. That's what we likely going to start doing when we sit down. Meditation for a lifetime is quite a bit of something. It's like going to the gym every day. And you can't live without it. He's real, he's real, he's real to me. Black church, Jesus is real to me. All the mothers dressed in white dresses, swaying back, 6 of them in the front of the church before the church began. He's real, he's real, he's real, he's real. Jesus is real to me. Some people doubt him, but I can't live without him. He's real, he's real, he's real, he's real. Jesus is real to me. So concentration, precondition, meditation. Meditation is more important for spiritual realization and is essential for attaining to the last step of Raja Yoga, the royal path, the handle that fits all the others, knowledge, love, and work as service, as worship, which is called the superconsciousness, samadhi, that state. Your mind is constantly running toward external objects, and when you control the flow of your mental energy from running toward them and keep it fixed on higher objects, it's called meditation. And if you can reach that stage in an hour, let's say, of meditation in the morning, you may think, I'm not saying different people, different strokes for different folks, that not a whole lot has happened, but you're steady as a flame. You're locked in a state of mind. They're not too complicated. And my friends, when you come out, and all the hard work that it might have taken to get to that point of steady, I love to say our Swami, our founding, our Swami now is a man of steady wisdom, our head Swami. That steady state, as they call it, huh? When you go out and you come into your own place where the light may be cheerful and bright and all, you may feel the joy. But to be in that state of steadiness can be done. And Vivekananda is so wonderful about it. He says, like sometimes when you're reading a book, you forget about the outside. And I think he actually uses, I'm sure he does, uses the phrase with a little Americanism in it. You don't hear the clopping of the horse's feet on the cobblestones. You don't. Yeah, man, we were right next to a freeway. Hey, I like to say it's either the way of the free or the freeway. My way of the freeway, my way is the way of the free. And when you're in that church, yes, we have double pane glass. Don't take long. You don't hear it. I mean, if you heard the freeway, the way you hear it in this house, the Vedanta Press now, that was a dormitory. I'd come over from Vivekananda House on the weekends, and I'd be riding with the trucks all night long, riding there, boom, boom, boom. If we heard the freeway like that, we'd have to move. The quietest place on earth, for me, is in the shrine, beautiful temple. Yeah, we should show them a picture of the temple next time if we can. We got a beautiful picture of the temple. Looks like the Taj Mahal. The Shrine of the Vedanta Society of Southern California is the quietest place on earth for me. Because pretty soon, that's the whole idea, sense deprived situation. The sound, the sights of the outer world are no longer with you. For instance, when you concentrate or meditate upon some spiritual object, God, or your true self with a capital S, that's called the Atman, or some idea like I and my Father are one, these are laboratory statements by the superluminary Jesus. And there's another one that's a laboratory statement. My favorite phrases in the Bible, I love it. And Moses came down from the mountain and wist not that the skin of his face shone. I I like to point out, there's a laboratory statement. Proved he was an illumined soul. That's demonstrated. That's a document. That's data. Laboratory report. What he's saying is he didn't know. He knew he was illumined on the inside, just been talking to God. What he didn't know was it was showing on the outside. And I love to do this, and a lot of people can't handle it, and I can understand, and I hope I don't jog your carriage, your buggy, your carriage too much. But, you know, we found out just recently what it was that God said to Moses. Remember that? He said, take 2 tablets and see me in the morning. All right. Now, for instance, when you concentrate or meditate upon some spiritual object, God, this is wonderful, or your true self, this is experiential, or some idea like, quote, I and my Father are one. Your mind ought to be steady upon that subject. If your mind is not steady, you cannot catch the real glimpses of the subject. Simply repeating the words, I and my Father are one, would not give you its true and spiritual meaning. That's why, my friend, with all due respect and even admiration, how can you not have it when people in their epiphany, in the fundamentalist churches, go to the altar, receive the call from God, and their heart draws them to the altar, and in submission they turn their lives to God. They call it second birth. It is. And yet, I don't know. I know it means a lot to them to just quote the chapter and verse. But for someone who's never heard the chapter and verse, from the King James Version of the Bible, which is the highest English, you know, it's like the King James Version, then you got Shakespeare, whatever to say, it's Book of Common Prayer, whatever. But if you've never heard what it means, especially in your own heart, John 3:16. So thank goodness that we got a lot of experiential denominations in this country, and they all are at their birth. They're all mystical at their birth. So he says that the object of meditation, I and my Father only, simply repeating the words, you know, will not give you its true and spiritual meaning. The object of meditation is to understand the real meaning, the experiential meaning, and to realize it, not merely to know it intellectually, and I feel like closing the book, like slamming the book closed. I'm not going to overdo this because I don't want to get always so provincial, but you know, we start where we are from who we am, and we just as well share it if we're in a loving situation where we feel we can do it, protect it. And of course, our Swami from Australia keeps talking about my amness, some deep inner conviction, which he feels people have, of the substantiality underlying standing, the foundation, the essence of their being, my amness. That's our Swami in Australia. And when Jesus says, before Abraham was, I am, and the Swami feels that that amness thing is ineluctable. It's subverbal, and it cannot be denied. That's what he thinks. So we're talking about understanding here, and that is to actually experience the words of the Scriptures. And that's why I like to say that to me, with all its glory, Christmas and Easter are not enough, and I'm one of the little Boy Scouts that used to put down more than 1,000 bulletins, little white paper bulletins for the Sunday services at the Riverside Church, 20-story church on the Hudson River, where a mystical preacher, however, Fosdick held for. And on Easter, we had to put everybody wherever we could shoehorn them in. It was a 20-story building, but we had this room and that room, the basement, and everything, because people would come to church. They call them Christmas and Easter Christians. They're like bookends, my friend. Jesus was the Alpha and the Omega. And if you want to know Jesus, there's two ways to do it. One is to read. And lots of people don't do it. My goodness, the Bright Bible was only translated into the vernacular, into the common speech of the people just a few hundred years ago. And it was a deep penalty to translate the Bible so people could understand. And the second one is in meditation. To feel the experience of what he's saying. In other words, it's not enough that he was born and he died. He lived. He lived to save us all. Every time I feel the Spirit, you know how I feel, moving in my heart, I will pray. Every time I feel the Spirit moving in my heart, I will pray. So to form a relation with your own ideal of God in meditation. Yeah, read the scriptures, read these subjective laboratory reports with understanding. So the object of meditation, to understand the real meaning and to realize it, not merely to know it intellectually. I got a belly full, my friends. That's why I was real willing to slap the book. It is no big thing, you know. I had a lot of good book learning thrown at me. And I loved school, even from a kid. Wanted to go back to school in the fall. And I got indigestion. I got a tummy ache. Because what they want you to do in this really remnant of the Aristotelian education in our universities in those days was to listen to the lectures, read the books, and then pass a blue book exam in which you were able to spout back what the fellow had said or what you read, and it really helped if you could, like a person learning a part in a play, I mean, I did that, to memorize it. And what people ended up doing was they would take a corn cob like we have on the prairie, in the corn hog belt, Illinois, Iowa, where my folks come from, and it grows hard. So you put it in a machine, and all the little kernels come off dry. So you take these little objective kernels, these little things of knowledge, and you put it in a cart and you dump it back in the wheelbarrow and give it back to the teacher of the Blue Book exam, which is supposed to show that you've digested them. Not so easy. That's why I say with a big smile on my face that Harvard University wouldn't dare, as great as it is, and every day you turn it out, wonderful people, wouldn't dare to give an exam 2 years after the boy, for example, graduates as a senior on the subjects that he's been studying 2 years before. Oh, it's a wonderful subject, this idea of really understanding it or just having book learning. And I love this mystical shoe cobbler in South Pasadena, Swamiji House when I was there, Harry Goldfarb. He was an actual mystic. And his wife would sit out there reading a newspaper in Yiddish. He could read Yiddish, but he really was not, I mean, he was great in English, but he didn't write it particularly, But these papers were culturally very, very high, and they were full of science and all that and so on. And she's just laughing one day on the bench outside the shoe cobbler's shop, And I asked her grandmother, what are you talking about? You guy called him grandfather shoemaker. Anyway, I said, what are you laughing at? She said some boy at Columbia sued Columbia University for not teaching him anything. Do you see the difference between walking and talking with your mind stayed on God in the experience of the words and the writing of his life, the scriptures, and then going into meditation and through love, feeling the relation and the presence. My friends, it doesn't get any deeper than this. So that's how I found Vedanta. And yep, I can't go any further tonight. Yes. Simply repeating the words will not give you its true and spiritual meaning. This is it. This is the difference between Vedanta and all of those avenues of faith which point out being a practitioner. That's why a professor, a teacher, even a philosopher, someone in a school, will not cut the mustard if she and he are not practitioners. And if they are, my dear friends, it'll make all the difference in the world. You know that statement? I love it. To the whole world, you may be one person. But a teacher like that, you say, but to one person, you may be the whole world. And that's what we place upon our head swamis in all of Vedanta societies, because my definition of an ashram, and here we have householders and devotees, a symbiotic relationship in the ashram. My definition of an ashram is a place where a holy man lives. So, the object of meditation is to understand the real meaning and to realize it, not merely to know it intellectually, but to feel it and be one with the ideal. That's why these songs mean so much to me. I just learned the other day about the Neanderthal men painting pictures 600,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago in Europe of animals and stuff, not just Homo sapiens, but Homo sapiens, Neanderthalensis. And they're painting pictures. That was how many years before writing began? So that's what they mean. And the songs of the African people who brought their innate wisdom of what we call the eternal religion, Sanatana Dharma, mysticism, from the land, the motherland, which we can too all go so to, and we've done that. Cape Town, Parliament of Religions, and feel that we're back home around the fire of the motherland. We left some time earlier. African people who come to this country, and then their ecstatic moments, they will sing, you know. I know the Lord, I know the Lord, I know the Lord has laid his hands on me. Well, I know the Lord, I know the Lord, I know the Lord has laid his hands on me. And how about this one? The extension, the emanation, as Plotinus would say, of the sun shining. And we'll go out on this one. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside and study war no more. Sing along with me. And study war no more, study war no more, and study war no more, and study war no more, and study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. God love you.